I couldn't really, in good taste, invite him to where I was staying because my hosts and their child had not given me permission, and it was the State Department abode that I would have been bringing him back to. However, hi, this is Mike Balaban. Welcome to another episode of BAMMER Talks. Although today I'm going to offer you a mashup of a BAMMER Talk and a BAMMER Tale. A BAMMER Talk is an episode where I discuss a topic of great interest to the LGBT community, and a BAMMER Tale is one in which I share a story from my gay life in the past. Today, I'm going to bring you two stories actually that are conjoined and that will represent the topic that I want to cover today. That topic is social media and how it might be a positive or a negative influence in our lives. The impact that social media has had on many of us is kind of hard to overestimate. In some cases, of course, there is kind of negative rumor mongering and paranoia and conspiracy theories, etc. But in other cases, it can have really beneficial impacts, such as the one that I most benefit from, which is when I am reconnect with people from my past who I've fallen out of touch with, and social media helps reconnect us. So in this case, in 1998, I accepted a job with my employer and had to be reassigned to Tokyo for what was expected to be 2 or 3 years. And that was in March of 98. It was a rather daunting and alien experience for me because I hardly knew anyone in Japan and didn't speak the language. It ended up being quite a positive experience overall, but it took some adjustment. I ended up meeting a Korean-Japanese man who became my boyfriend for a year. And then at Christmas time, I traveled back to the U.S. to be with my family in New York and Connecticut. And then when the holiday was over, I flew back to Tokyo and then off for the weekend to Hong Kong to join a couple of close friends for New Year's Eve. They were my colleagues from graduate school. The guy was the first person that I ever came out to. His wife was a mutual friend of ours. They got married shortly after graduate school. I attended the wedding, and then they joined the Foreign Service, the State Department. And over the next 25 years or so, were transferred to multiple destinations in some exotic locales where they proceeded to move up the ranks of the Foreign Service employees. The guy would ultimately become the deputy ambassador or deputy mission head in multiple U.S. embassy locations, ranging from Hong Kong twice to Singapore to Bangkok, Thailand to Paris, France. And I was one of the few family and friends that visited them in every location they lived in. So in 98, I found myself staying with them for New Year's in Hong Kong. And on that evening, I was invited to a cocktail party thrown by a gay couple I knew from New York who were there working with Citibank. And I asked my host, would you like to join me? The wife said, no, I'm going to stay home with our daughter. The husband said, okay, I'll come with you for a while. He joined me. Shortly before midnight, he left to go be with his wife when the clock struck midnight, which was appropriate. Then 2 a.m. came, the party broke up, and I didn't want to go home. It was New Year's Eve, but there really was no organized place to go. So I decided to stop in at Propaganda, which was the aptly named gay Western-friendly disco in Hong Kong, where Westerners would go and dance. And I walked into the disco. It was crowded for New Year's Eve. A whole sea of Asian ethnic faces, not surprisingly. And yet, across the dance floor, I saw a really handsome Western-looking guy. Intrigued, I made my way to the other side of the dance floor, and eventually we struck up a conversation. And pretty quickly, it became apparent that Jean, which was his name, who was Brazilian, was interested in getting together with me. We were mutually attracted to each other. Now, he was a model based in London in a relationship there. Was traveling with a friend in Tokyo for the holidays and ran into me. The problem was that he couldn't invite me back to his hotel room because his travel companion was there. I couldn't really, in good taste, invite him to where I was staying because my hosts and their child had not given me permission, and it was the State Department abode that I would have been bringing him back to. However, it was 3 in the morning on New Year's Eve, and there was no place to go. There were not even any quiet, dark corners in the disco where he and I might fool around a bit. And I was really reluctant to lose this opportunity to fool around with him, get to know him better. So I have to admit sheepishly and with some embarrassment that my little head outvoted my big head and that my testosterone drove my decision making. I brought Jean back with me to my host's apartment on the hillside overlooking the harbor of Hong Kong with a gorgeous view. And we fooled around quietly, stealthily, in the one-bedroom guest room next to the master bedroom where my hosts were staying. They did not wake up. They never discovered it. Finally, we finished fooling around at 5 in the morning or so. As he was dressing, I said to Jean, "Would you mind if I took a couple of photos of you? I really like to remember occasions like this visually. I'd like to have a memory of you." And he said, "Sure." So I took 2 photos, which I'll share today. And then after he was dressed, I walked him down to the lobby of the apartment building where I was staying, put him in a taxi, and sent him back to his hotel to join his traveling companion. We had exchanged email addresses and phone numbers, and for the next 9 to 12 months, we stayed somewhat in contact. But honestly, I remember thinking, he's in a relationship and lives in London. I'm here in Tokyo. The odds of us getting back together again aren't really very great. And so our contact fell off. And that was it from about 2000 for 17 or 18 years. And then in 2017 or 18, I decided to post the 2 photos I had taken of Jean back in 1998-99 on my Instagram page, BAMMER47. And when I did that and told the story, amazingly, within a few hours, someone had recognized him, contacted him, and I heard from Jean. "Hey, great to reconnect with you. Thanks for sharing our story." He was very supportive of it. "I'm no longer living in London. I'm no longer a model. I'm back in Brazil where I'm an artist." I think he may have gotten married or was getting married at the time. "But now you have an excuse to come back to Brazil to visit me." And I was excited by that prospect. And for the next couple of New Year's, I tried to find a traveling companion. That's usually the best time when people can get vacation off and travel a long distance. And Brazil, is a 12-hour flight from the U.S. But I really was unable to find anyone. And the thought of traveling by myself, thousands of miles, a couple of $1,000s for a ticket, to visit someone that I had only met for a few hours by myself was really a little daunting. So I put it off. Then COVID came and all travel ceased for a couple of years. So here we are in 2023, and I think I've found a friend willing to travel with me, perhaps the end of next year, 2024, and I've alerted Jean, and he and his husband are looking forward to hosting us. So that's the story and the positive side of how the internet reconnects people after a long time apart. The other story is my friend John, my first friend that I came out to from graduate school, who was in the State Department with his wife. Around 2004, 2005, John told his wife that he was gay and attracted to men and wanted a divorce. Now, I was not informed of this at first because until they told their daughter, who was in prep school in the United States, he was sworn to secrecy. So I was visiting him in Hong Kong, not staying with him that time, and he told me the news. And he said, "Not only that, I'm living with my Hong Kong ethnic Chinese boyfriend. He's around the corner and would like to meet you. Are you up for it?" I'm like, "Absolutely." So he came over, we met, we got along great. Over the next 10 years, when I would go to Hong Kong on business, I would stay with John and his boyfriend, whose name I won't mention because he's not out to his family there. And eventually in 2015, the Chinese boyfriend decided, despite not being out in his home country, he wanted the safety and security of marriage. So he and John flew to New York in May of 15, asked me to be their best man, their witness, their photographer, and their flower boy. And I was with them when they got married. They went back to Hong Kong, lived there for another 5 or 6 years. As the world now knows, China has taken over Hong Kong and the conditions have gotten somewhat perilous for Westerners. And so eventually, John and his husband moved to the United States a year and a half ago and live on the West Coast where we get to see each other occasionally. Now, I finally told John that I had embarrassingly used his and his wife's apartment for my own selfish sexual needs way back in 1998, 99. He could give a damn. He doesn't care. And no one's in touch with his ex-wife, so he probably won't find out. That is how the internet affects me. I've had that happen a dozen times. How about you? Have you found that social media has been a positive influence in your life? Thanks for listening to another episode of BAMMER Talks. This has been Mike Balaban. Goodbye.